Do you know how many microscopic cancers develop inside your body every single day? Not every year, not every month, every single day. The answer, based on what we now understand from autopsy studies and molecular biology research, is somewhere between 5 and 10,000. 5 to 10,000 microscopic abnormal cell clusters arising and being dealt with inside your body every 24 hours. And you feel nothing. You have no idea it's happening. You go to work, you cook dinner, you sleep, you wake up. And this silent biological war is being fought inside you around the clock. Now here is the question that has driven my entire career, and the question I want you to sit with today. Why do some of those microscopic cancers grow into something dangerous, while the overwhelming majority of them never do? What is the difference between the person who develops a clinical cancer and the person whose body quietly eliminates those same abnormal clusters before they ever become a problem? Because that difference exists. It is real, it is measurable, and increasingly the evidence points to something that is entirely within your control. Something you do 3 times a day, every single day of your life. What you eat. My name is Dr. William Lee. I'm a physician and scientist, and for the past several decades, I have been studying the relationship between food, biology, and disease, specifically cancer. I've had the privilege of working with institutions like Harvard, the NIH, and the White House on health policy. I've written about this in books that have reached millions of readers, and I lead an international initiative called Eat to Beat Cancer, which is built on one foundational idea, that the foods you choose to put in your body either support your defenses against cancer or they undermine them. There is no neutral. Every meal is either working for you or against you at a biological level. And today I want to be completely direct with you, not in a general wellness way, not in a eat more vegetables way. I want to walk you through the specific foods that the latest research has identified as active drivers of cancer growth. Foods that most people are consuming every single day without any idea of what they're doing inside the body. And I want to explain the mechanism, because understanding why something is harmful is what actually changes behavior. Not fear, not guilt, understanding. But before I get to those 3 foods, I need to give you the biological foundation, because without it, none of what I'm about to say will fully land, and I want it to land. I want it to change something for you. Between 90 and 95% of cancers are attributable to environment, diet, and lifestyle. That statistic comes from research published in some of the most respected journals in medicine, and it is one of the most important and most underappreciated facts in all of modern oncology. What it means is that the majority of cancer cases are not written in your genes. They are not inevitable. They are not something that was decided the moment you were born. They are the product of decades of interaction between your biology and your environment. And diet is one of the most powerful environmental factors we know of. This is why cancers that were once considered diseases of old age are now appearing in people in their 40s, their 30s, and in some cases, their 20s. This is a new phenomenon. It is not explained by genetics because our genes don't change that fast. It is explained by environment, by what we are eating, by what we are being exposed to, by the dramatic shift in the food supply that has occurred over the past 50 years, and the equally dramatic shift in what the average person puts in their body every single day. Now, your body has extraordinary natural defenses against cancer. I want to spend a moment on this because I think most people dramatically underestimate how capable their own biology is when it's properly supported. You have an immune surveillance system that patrols your tissues around the clock, identifying and destroying abnormal cells. You have a process called angiogenesis regulation that controls whether a tumor can grow its own blood supply. And without a blood supply, a tumor cannot grow beyond the size of a pinhead. You have stem cell repair systems that fix damaged DNA before it can accumulate into something dangerous. You have a microbiome in your gut that communicates directly with your immune system and influences how aggressively your body responds to cellular threats. These systems are remarkable. They are working right now in your body in this moment. But they can be supported or they can be undermined. They can be amplified or they can be suppressed. And the single most consistent daily influence on all of these systems, the one thing that touches all of them simultaneously, multiple times a day, every day of your life, is food. So when I say that what you eat either fights cancer or fuels it, I am not speaking metaphorically. I am describing a direct biological reality. Specific compounds in food directly influence tumor angiogenesis. Specific compounds influence NK cell activity. Specific compounds influence inflammatory signaling, insulin pathways, microbiome composition, and DNA repair mechanisms. This is not theory. This is mechanistic science, confirmed in cell studies, animal models, and increasingly in large human clinical trials. With that foundation in place, let me now talk about the 3 foods The three categories of food that the research consistently and compellingly links to increased cancer risk, and that most people are eating every single day without realizing what they're doing to their internal environment. The first one is ultra-processed food, and I want to be precise about what I mean when I say ultra-processed, because this term gets used loosely, and I don't want any ambiguity. Ultra-processed foods are not simply foods that have been cooked or preserved. They are industrial food products that contain ingredients you would never find in a home kitchen: emulsifiers, artificial colorings, flavor enhancers, modified starches, hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup, and dozens of other chemical additives designed to extend shelf life, enhance palatability, and manipulate the reward systems in your brain so that you eat more than you intended to. Packaged snack foods, reconstituted meat products, flavored breakfast cereals, most fast food, soft drinks, pre-packaged meals, instant noodles, the majority of what lines the interior aisles of a modern grocery store. The research linking ultra-processed food consumption to cancer risk has been accumulating rapidly and is now, frankly, difficult to dismiss. A large prospective study published in the British Medical Journal followed over 100,000 adults and found that a 10% increase in the proportion of ultra-processed food in the diet was associated with a significant increase in overall cancer risk, including breast cancer risk. Other large studies have found associations with colorectal cancer, which is one of the fastest rising cancers in younger populations right now. The biological mechanisms are multiple and overlapping. Ultra-processed foods are typically stripped of fiber, which the gut microbiome depends on for fuel. When the microbiome is deprived of fiber, it begins to break down the protective mucus lining of the intestinal wall, literally eating the barrier that separates your gut contents from your bloodstream. This leads to a condition researchers call increased intestinal permeability, or leaky gut, in which bacterial components and inflammatory molecules enter the bloodstream and trigger a chronic systemic inflammatory response. And as I've already mentioned, chronic inflammation is one of the most powerful drivers of cancer development that we know of. Ultra-processed foods also tend to be high in additives that directly disrupt the gut microbiome. Emulsifiers like carboxymethylcellulose and polysorbate 80, which are used in hundreds of processed foods to improve texture and extend shelf life, have been shown in animal studies to significantly alter gut microbial composition in ways that promote inflammation. Artificial sweeteners, which are widely used in diet and low-calorie processed products, have been shown to disrupt insulin signaling and alter microbiome diversity in ways that may paradoxically increase metabolic risk. And then there is the question of contaminants. Ultra-processed foods are packaged in materials that can leach endocrine-disrupting chemicals, compounds that interfere with hormonal signaling in ways that are particularly relevant to hormone-sensitive cancers like breast and prostate cancer. The food itself may be sprayed with pesticide residues. The processing may generate compounds like acrylamide, which forms when starchy foods are cooked at very high temperatures, that are classified as probable human carcinogens. I am not telling you that eating a packaged snack once in a while will give you cancer. That is not how biology works. What I am telling you is that a diet dominated by ultra-processed food, consumed day after day, year after year, creates a biological environment inside your body that is systematically less capable of defending you against cancer. It depletes your microbial defenses, it drives chronic inflammation, it disrupts hormonal signaling, it degrades the barriers that protect your tissues. And it does all of this gradually, invisibly, without any symptoms, until one day something shows up on a scan that didn't used to be there. The second food I want to talk about is processed red meat, and I want to be clear about the distinction here, because it matters. I am not talking about unprocessed red meat consumed in moderation. That is a more nuanced conversation with a more nuanced answer. I am talking specifically about processed red meat: bacon, hot dogs, sausages, salami, pepperoni, ham, deli meats, and any other meat product that has been preserved through salting, smoking, curing, or the addition of chemical preservatives, particularly nitrates and nitrites. The World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, classified processed red meat as a Group 1 carcinogen in 2015. Group 1 means there is sufficient evidence in humans that the substance causes cancer. It is the same classification as tobacco smoke and asbestos. Now, that doesn't mean that eating a slice of ham is as dangerous as smoking a cigarette. The dose matters enormously. But it does mean that the causal relationship between processed red meat consumption and cancer, specifically colorectal cancer, is not a hypothesis. It is an established scientific conclusion. The mechanisms are well understood. When meat is preserved with nitrates and nitrites, these compounds can react with proteins in the meat, and later in your digestive tract, to form N-nitroso compounds, which are potent DNA-damaging agents. They directly attack the genetic material of the cells lining your colon, increasing the rate of mutations that can eventually lead to cancer. The smoking process produces polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, another class of known carcinogens. The high iron content of red meat, in its hemiform, can promote the formation of additional carcinogenic compounds in the colon, and the research on dose and risk is sobering. Studies have consistently found that consuming 50 grams of processed red meat per day, roughly 1 to 2 slices of bacon, or 1 hot dog, is associated with approximately an 18% increase in colorectal cancer risk. That may not sound enormous in absolute terms, but colorectal cancer is the third most common cancer in the world. An 18% increase in risk, applied across a lifetime of daily consumption, is not trivial. It is the kind of number that, if it were attached to a drug's side effects, would stop the drug from ever reaching the market. And yet bacon and deli meat and hot dogs are everyday foods for hundreds of millions of people. They are in school lunches and hospital cafeterias. They are sold at every gas station and convenience store. They are normalized in a way that their cancer classification simply does not reflect. I want to be practical for a moment, because I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, everything causes cancer. You can't eat anything without worrying, and I understand that frustration, but what I'm describing is not a fringe concern or a speculative risk. It is some of the most well-established dose-response evidence in all of nutritional epidemiology, and the practical implication is not that you can never eat bacon again. It is that processed red meat should not be a daily feature of your diet. It should be an occasional food, consumed infrequently, in the context of a diet that is otherwise rich in protective foods. That is a manageable, realistic, achievable change. And the biological payoff is real. The third food I want to discuss is one that surprises people more than the other two, because it doesn't have the reputation for danger that processed meat does, and because it is often marketed actively as a health product. I'm talking about sugar, specifically added sugar in large, consistent quantities, and the metabolic environment it creates in your body. Now, I want to be precise here, because the relationship between sugar and cancer is more mechanistic than direct. Cancer cells do not simply eat sugar and grow. The biology is more sophisticated than that, and I want to explain it properly because the popular simplification of cancer feeds on sugar, so cut out all carbs, is not accurate and leads people to make dietary choices that are sometimes counterproductive. Here is what the evidence actually shows. Consistently high sugar intake, particularly from added sugars, refined carbohydrates, and sugar-sweetened beverages, drives chronically elevated insulin and insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1. And elevated insulin and IGF-1 create what we call a pro-tumorigenic environment, a systemic biological state in which cancer cells are more likely to survive, proliferate, and evade immune detection. Insulin is a growth signal. When it is chronically elevated, it promotes cellular growth across the board, including in cells that should not be growing. The relationship between elevated IGF-1 and cancer risk is particularly well established for breast, prostate, colorectal, and endometrial cancers. And the pathway from high sugar intake to elevated IGF-1 is direct and well documented. Excess dietary sugar drives insulin resistance over time, which drives compensatory insulin production, which drives IGF-1 signaling. This is not a speculative chain, it is established endocrinology. Beyond the insulin pathway, high sugar intake drives obesity, and obesity is now recognized as one of the most significant modifiable cancer risk factors we have. Excess adipose tissue, particularly visceral fat around the abdominal organs, is metabolically active in ways that directly promote cancer development. It produces estrogen, which increases breast and uterine cancer risk. It produces inflammatory cytokines. It disrupts hormonal signaling in multiple systems. The relationship between obesity and cancer risk has now been established for at least 13 different cancer types. And the single dietary factor most consistently associated with the kind of weight gain that leads to metabolically harmful obesity is excess consumption of added sugar and refined carbohydrates. There is also evidence that high sugar intake directly fuels angiogenesis, the growth of new blood vessels. And as I mentioned at the beginning, angiogenesis is the process that allows a microscopic tumor cluster to grow into something clinically significant. Without blood supply, a tumor cannot grow. With abundant blood supply, stimulated by high circulating glucose and insulin, it can. This is one of the areas my own research has focused on, and the findings are consistently clear. Dietary factors that promote insulin and glucose dysregulation also promote the kind of angiogenic signaling that allows early tumor clusters to become established tumors. Sugar-sweetened beverages deserve special mention here because they are in a category of their own in terms of metabolic impact. A single 500 milliliter bottle of soda contains roughly 50 to 55 grams of added sugar, more than the World Health Organization's recommended daily limit for added sugar for an adult. It is consumed in minutes. It produces a rapid spike in blood glucose and insulin. It provides no fiber, no protein, no micronutrients, nothing that would slow its absorption or mitigate its metabolic impact. And it is consumed in many households multiple times per day, every single day for decades. The cumulative metabolic burden of that pattern of consumption over a lifetime is something we are only now beginning to fully reckon with in the cancer literature. I want to bring this all together now because I don't want to leave you simply with a list of things to fear. Fear is not useful. Fear makes people feel overwhelmed and paralyzed and eventually resigned. What I want you to feel is agency, because the same science that identifies these 3 foods as cancer risk drivers also points clearly toward what you can do instead. And the evidence for protective dietary patterns is just as robust as the evidence for harmful ones. The woman I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, the data showing that women who consumed higher amounts of soy had a 30% lower risk of breast cancer recurrence and mortality, is one of many examples of food as medicine at the population level. Soy contains compounds called isoflavones that have been shown to inhibit angiogenesis, modulate estrogen receptor activity, and support immune function in ways that are directly relevant to cancer biology. It is not magic, it is mechanism. It is the same kind of molecular interaction that I've been describing throughout this conversation, working in the opposite direction, supporting your defenses rather than undermining them. The same applies to a wide range of foods that the research consistently identifies as cancer protective. Deeply colored berries, which contain compounds that slow tumor angiogenesis. Cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and Brussels sprouts, which contain sulforaphane, a compound that activates your body's own cellular detoxification systems and has been shown to suppress cancer cell growth in multiple studies. Green tea, which contains EGCG, one of the most studied anti-angiogenic compounds in food. Tomatoes, particularly cooked tomatoes, which are rich in lycopene, a compound with well-documented effects on prostate cancer risk. Oily fish like salmon and sardines, which provide omega-3 fatty acids that reduce inflammatory signaling and support immune function. Fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, and kimchi, which populate your gut with beneficial bacteria that strengthen your microbiome's cancer protective functions. None of these foods is a cure. None of them is a guarantee. Cancer is a complex disease influenced by many factors, and diet is one piece of a larger picture that includes genetics, environment, sleep, stress, physical activity, and access to medical care. But it is a piece that is entirely within your control, every single day, multiple times a day, and that is an extraordinary opportunity that most people are not fully taking advantage of. What I would say to anyone who wants to start making meaningful changes is this: don't try to overhaul everything at once. That approach almost always fails because it is cognitively overwhelming and because it removes all the foods you enjoy before you've had time to discover the protective foods that you might enjoy just as much. Instead, make one swap at a time. Replace your daily soda with green tea or water with lemon. Replace your processed deli meat sandwich with a meal built around whole grains, vegetables, and a clean protein source. Start reading ingredient labels, not calorie counts, ingredient lists. And if you can't recognize what's in a product, consider whether it belongs in your body every day. Think about the version of yourself 6 months from now, the version who has made a few consistent, sustainable changes and whose body, at the cellular level, is operating in a fundamentally different environment, whose microbiome is more diverse and more robust, whose inflammatory markers are lower, whose insulin signaling is more balanced, whose NK cells are more active. That version of you exists. The path to that version of you runs directly through the choices you make at your next meal. I have spent my career trying to translate the science of food and cancer into something that ordinary people can actually use. Not just doctors and researchers, but anyone who eats. Because everyone eats. And everyone deserves to understand what their food is doing inside their body. Not in a way that creates anxiety or guilt or obsession, but in a way that creates genuine, informed, empowered choice. The science is clear. The mechanisms are understood. The opportunity is real. And it starts at your very next meal. Now, if what I shared today resonated with you, if something clicked, if you're going to make even one change based on what you've heard, I want to ask you for something very simple. Hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, it costs you nothing, and it tells the algorithm that this kind of science-based, honest health information matters, which means it gets shown to more people who need to hear it. And if you want to keep receiving this kind of content, the research, the mechanisms, the practical tools that your doctor may not have time to explain in a standard appointment, then please subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications, because I have a great deal more to share with you, and I promise every single video will give you something real, something grounded in science, and something you can actually use. I'll see you in the next one.